Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and today I want to talk about my ideas for Season 3 of Star Trek Discovery, my predictions, my hopes, my fears, what I think they should do or not do. I do still have some hopes for Season 3, maybe this is finally their opportunity since they're now kind of free from continuity, even though I don't think they're completely free, I'll get to that. But I do think this is finally their opportunity to do their own thing, to stop messing up with the rest of the Star Trek series and all of that. So finally they can do something fresh, they can start fresh and do something new and original, and so it can finally become a much better show if they do it right. So that's why I want to give my own ideas, and I want to also kind of warn them the things they shouldn't be doing, stuff that would piss off the old Trekkies. So just because they jump to the far future, it doesn't mean it's a clean slate. It doesn't mean they can do whatever they want. They would still have to follow some bit of continuity. And I do hope that maybe finally the show can stand on its own now that it will be kind of separated from all the other stuff. And I hope they will keep it separated, meaning they should stay in the beta quadrant. They should say that they lost their spore drive and are unable to return to the alpha quadrant, and that way they won't meet anyone else from Starfleet and the Federation, which would be kind of ridiculous because those would be so much more advanced now, so Discovery would be like an ancient ship in comparison, so why would they stay on that old ship, and therefore it's kind of a problem. So I hope they will do it like a Voyager style, that they are lost in space, in some distant part of the galaxy, and they have no contact with the rest of the Federation, at least until the end of Season 3. And that way they can do their own thing and be totally disconnected from most of the continuity of the other shows, and they don't have to worry about it. So that's how I think Season 3 should go. Simply stay isolated for a while, just like Voyager was. Have the spore drive been damaged. It's a good thing they had the Stamens be injured in the end of the season. That way, without him, they can't really use the spore drive, so that means they'll get stuck there. Maybe they ran out of those spores, maybe they died while they crossed in time, maybe it had a negative effect on all the spores and they all died off. And until they can find new samples of those spores, they will not be able to use the spore drive, and that's great. Because that means they'll be stuck on that other side of the galaxy for a while. So that's my number one advice to them in Season 3, simply stay isolated and don't meet anyone from the Federation for a very long while, and do your own new stories with your own ship and your own crew, and don't try to mix it with anything else. And thank God we will never have to see Sarek and Amanda again, we won't have to see Admiral Kathleen Kennedy again. So many of the annoying things they kind of got rid of, so hopefully finally they can start exploring their own characters and not having to rely on all this nostalgia from the other shows like Spock and all that stuff. It's finally time for them to stand on their own, finally begin to develop your own characters. You have all these bridge characters that we hardly know, that we only know from the bridge. We have Mr. No Response, we have Mrs. T, we have One-Eyed Lisa, we have Mr. Rice. We have all these bridge characters who we know nothing about, so maybe it's finally time to get to know them, finally have some scenes to them, instead of letting Michael do everything on the show. Why not have some team effort and give your minor characters something to do for a change, and develop those characters and have us care about those characters, have them go on some missions on some planets, do something with these characters finally. I think Saru should be the captain. I think it's about time that the Star Trek show would have an alien as the lead of the show, as the captain of the show. That's something we never saw on any of the other Star Trek shows. We always had the human as the lead, which is kind of, one of my problems with Star Trek is that they always kind of boost up humanity, like humans are the best at everything, they're the most clever species and so on. That's kind of annoying. And I really like the actor of Saru. I didn't like what they did with his character most of the time. At first they made him a coward, then they kind of retconned that, so suddenly he's not a coward. And I think they made him overpowered a little bit. They gave him too many abilities, so he's so clever. He remembers every language in the Federation. He has supervision. He has super strength. He's running faster than anyone. They gave him too many abilities, in my opinion. But I also think the actor's great, and he was great as the captain. It would be nice to finally have a Star Trek show with an alien as the captain. Definitely don't make Michael the captain. That would be very annoying. Keep Michael as the first officer. Saru should be the captain. And I think Michael should be less of a superhero type, and finally give the rest of the crew, the rest of the team, more things to do and have it be a team effort. So that's a very important thing that the show was lacking. So I think Season 3 should begin right where it ended. We should see the Discovery going through the wormhole to the future, and I would like to see a similar special effect to the one we saw in Star Trek 4, when we saw Kirk and his team time jump to the past. We saw all kinds of strange visual special effects. I think I would like to see something in that style, but obviously with better special effects, with new special effects, but in that style of Star Trek 4. I think if this is supposed to be set in the same universe, then the same kind of visual special effects should represent the same stuff. That's why I actually really liked when they did the wormhole effect from the motion picture when they were going through the wormhole in the end of season 2. I really loved the fact that they kind of references that special effect from the first movie. And it made sense because if it's in the same universe and they're also going through a wormhole, then it makes perfect sense for there to be a similar visual special effect. And so I think the very first scene of season 3 should be a similar kind of a montage of special effects, similar to the one we saw in Star Trek 4 in the time jump, but obviously with better special effects and with more stuff. You can add stuff to it. I also love all kinds of artistic visual special effects, so I would like to see their updated version of that kind of stuff. It will also be an opportunity to plant clues and foreshadowing to stuff that is going to happen in season 3. And you can kind of show glimpses of stuff to come, so that will also make it kind of mysterious and interesting, and if you do it in a beautiful artistic way, that might be great. So I really hope they'll start the season that way. And then the Discoverer should appear out of the wormhole and start looking for that planet with Michael's mother, and you should make the first episode kind of mysterious, make it unclear if the timeline indeed changed or not. So maybe keep the engines shut down in the first episode. You know, in Star Trek 4, after they time travel, they said the lithium crystals got drained because of the time traveling, so you can do the same thing. And even though they should know a way to recrystallize the crystals because of that chick from Zahia, so technically they should be able to fix it, but maybe they don't have the necessary equipment for that. They still have to find something on some planet to make it possible. So have them get stranded in space for at least one episode, have them be unable to go to warp, and so they only stumble around one solar system, trying to look for what they need to fix their engines. And of course Stamets is injured, so they cannot use the spore jump, and you should keep that for the whole season, in my opinion. Simply make the spore drive inoperable for the whole season and be stuck in the other side of the galaxy in the beta quadrant, which is a quadrant we didn't really see a lot in the other Star Trek shows, and so this will be a good opportunity to introduce brand new stuff which we never saw before on the other shows, and it will be okay, it wouldn't violate continuity. And then have the plot of trying to find Michael's mother and make it unclear, make it mysterious, make the characters wonder if they will really find her or not, because they should speculate that maybe she got stuck in that other timeline in which Control destroyed all life. Since she was sent back to that future, maybe she stayed in that future. Just because they changed the timeline to a good one, in which all life wasn't destroyed, that doesn't mean she will be there, because maybe she got stuck in that other timeline. I made a whole video breakdown of all the timelines and all the time traveling, and I talked about that point a lot. So you shouldn't meet her right away, so make it mysterious, make it have them kind of look for her and not know if she will be there or not. Hopefully they will not be doing any more time traveling, even though I said there were a bunch of plot holes. They didn't really cover all the plot holes with the time traveling in the previous season, but I think it would be a mistake to jump back to that time. So simply start fresh, forget about the past, don't go back to that time period, really do it a fresh story. That's the best way in my opinion. And the only tie-in would be Michael's mother, so at some point have Michael meet her mother and do some stuff with that. Technically they might do something with time travel. Maybe they will meet her mother before the time that they saw her in that episode in which they met her. Maybe they can meet her before she actually went there, and she can see what she said to Michael, that she saw that Philippia will sacrifice herself to save Michael. Maybe that's something we can still see. And also at some point I expect them to have Philippia go back in time, so maybe she's the one who steals that Red Angel suit to jump back in time herself somehow, even though according to their own rules that means she always gets pulled back to the future. Maybe they can use another time crystal. Maybe Ash Tyler can appear in the future by using a time crystal from Borath. So it all depends which characters they really want to keep on the show or not. I think Philippa was a really annoying character. I would love to see her either getting killed off, or if not, maybe send her back to the past so she can have her own spin-off, which by the way I hate that whole idea of a Section 31 show. But whatever you do, simply get rid of this character. I don't think she should be on the ship. She's an evil space Hitler. I don't like her, I don't want to see her. Just get rid of her, please. And finally have some brand new science fiction stories. Have the Discovery go from planet to planet and actually go to some planets, because most of the show has been on the ships all the time and it was really annoying, really claustrophobic. You have such a big budget, you should finally show us some alien planets. So have them go to some planet and have some kind of new science fiction story some episodic stories which end by the end of the episode. Don't drag this out too much. I really hate the way that this show was kind of serialized and the story keeps dragging from episode to episode. It's so like watching one long boring movie, so that's not a good idea in my opinion. So have at least a few standalone episodes, standalone stories about specific planets, meet some new planets with some strange new civilization, not just some barren planet which is boring. Have them meet some kind of new alien civilization with an actual story which will come to a conclusion by the end of one episode, and it would feel like a Star Trek style of show. And don't drag it out, which makes it boring. And you can show that colony which they saved in season 2, that colony of people that got transplanted from the nuclear war. You can show their descendants on some planet, and that might be an interesting story to explore. Do they still believe the Red Angel story? Because remember, they were all religious because they saw they were being saved by a Red Angel, and so they believed that was a real angel. Wouldn't it be an interesting story to meet them and see that they're still believing in that religion? So you can do a story about that whole dilemma of whether or not to tell them the truth about their religion, that actually it was a human in a spacesuit that saved them and not really any kind of divine being. And so do that whole idea of religion versus science, but in a new way. And also this is your opportunity to play around with a planet of humans with a different culture, because you set up that colony as being descended from humans, and so you don't have to spend time on a lot of makeup. And so you can do a story which involves a large group of people which you don't have to put makeup on. So do some kind of big epic story with a big civilization of people which are all humans, so you can finally do a story about some the whole planet and the civilization, and you can really show all of that in a big scale without having to worry about a lot of makeup people. And then later you can have different kinds of stories with more exotic aliens on other planets, and then only show a few of them and do it for a different type of story. But if you want to play around with the civilization, then do it with this civilization of humans which you set up in the previous season. Now, in some point in season 3, I do want Michael to meet her mother, to finally find her mother somewhere, and to explain exactly what happened previously. And I do think it has the potential for a drama between a daughter and mother, and I don't know if they should keep her as a character on the show. Probably not. Maybe they should kill her off in some way, but first have some family dynamic and all that stuff. Exploit that relationship before you end it. Killed off in some way, or maybe stay on that planet that I mentioned before in order to teach them science or something, you know, invent some kind of way to get rid of her from the show after a few episodes, and hopefully finally start developing your own characters from the bridge crew. And also they have the whole setup with the AI on the ship, which they showed in the short track. They showed that the ship itself, I presume thanks to that sphere data, that the ship's computer actually became self-aware. I think it called itself Zora, I think. So that would be also a nice idea to explore. The idea of an advanced conscious AI as the ship itself, or as the ship's computer. So there's a lot of stories they can do with that, a lot of things they can play around with that idea. Maybe the crew of the Discovery will be kind of worried about that AI at first, because, you know, after their experience with Control as the evil AI, maybe they'll be very worried about this good AI. They won't know that it's really good in the beginning. It will have to kind of prove itself for the crew to really trust this AI. So this AI can be its own character, basically, just like it was in the short track story. I think if they do it well, it might be a very interesting character and a story, just like AI characters were always very interesting. The character of Data, the character of the holographic doctor. So have the ship's computer be an actual character. She can even project herself as a hologram to the crew to communicate with the crew. That might be an interesting, neat idea. And as for the villains, I think it would be neat to see the Kelpians as the villains in season 3, because it would be a nice follow-up to what happened with them. Because remember, the Ba'ul kept warning them, they kept saying you don't know what the Kelpians are, you don't know how dangerous they are. So it would be kind of a nice twist to realize that maybe the Ba'ul had a good point, maybe the Ba'ul had a good reason to fear the Kelpians. It would be a nice twist to discover that maybe the Ba'ul were not that evil after all. Maybe they had very good reasons to try to limit the Kelpians, because the Kelpians have that potential to become very dangerous species. Because, as I mentioned, they are extremely intelligent and also have a lot of superpowers. Basically, they are much stronger and faster and better vision and things that humans don't have, and very intelligent as well. So they have the potential to actually be great villains. And wouldn't it be cool to have Saru on opposite sides against them, if Saru is still loyal to his crew, obviously, but he would also have that temptation to rejoin his own species. Who will be the villain? Maybe they will have a whole empire or something, because they are so powerful in the future. Maybe they spread over the entire galaxy and they have a strong presence in the Beta Quadrant. and so they could be the big enemy with some kind of connection to Saru, and Saru would be tempted to maybe join them, but he's also a loyal Starfleet officer and with a duty to his own ship and his own crew, so he wants to protect them. And so it will be kind of an interesting dynamic, similar to Odo and the Founders in Deep Space Nine, or Isaac and the Kelon, so the same kind of idea. And it will be such a fun twist to realize that the Ba'ul were not actually the bad guys, and actually the Kelpians are extremely dangerous. Because they are so intelligent and they are so powerful, maybe they see themselves as a superior species, and because they became predators because of everything they did to liberate them, the Kelpians actually became predators, and maybe they are hunting other species, maybe they are eating other species in the galaxies. So that will be a reverse of how it used to be. So that's a really fun idea, which I do want them to explore. So maybe they will meet a giant spaceship full of Kelpians and they are the bad guys, and maybe they will be chasing the Discovery around, maybe because they want to steal their spore drive in order to conquer the rest of the galaxy, something like that. Have them chase the Discovery around, and Discovery does not yet have its spore drive, and so it's very limited, and it will be the underdog in this condition. The rest of Starfleet cannot help them, it's too far away, they don't know about them, because they classified their existence, so no one in Starfleet even knows about them, and they'll be running away from the evil Kelpians, trying to find planets to resupply from, and meeting all kinds of new civilizations, and having Star Trek kind of stories. Finally, that's what I've been waiting for. Finally show some brand new stories on some new planets and encounter brand new science fiction stuff, and maybe only toward the end of the season they will find a planet with those same spores which they can use to jump around the galaxy. Maybe even find the center of that spore network. That might be nice visually, because you know how in the intro of the show they keep showing the Discovery flying away from some giant flower? Wouldn't it be cool to see that kind of stuff in reality? See them actually encountering some kind of a huge creature like that, which might be connected with the spores that they're looking for, and so they have to take some of its spores, and yet this is like a giant monster and they have to run away from it. So maybe in the very end of the season they'll finally manage to find some of those spores, and then they can jump back into Federation space, and then they can show us in the very end of the season how big and great the Federation is in the future. So I really fear what I don't want them to do is to say that the Federation was destroyed in the future. That will be a terrible mistake, because it will basically undo all the victories of all the other shows. You know how we always had our heroes save the Federation, just barely, and all of that. If they show that the Federation was destroyed after all in the future, that will be a very big slap to the face, in my opinion. It will really undo all the victories of all the other Star Trek shows. And also, since they're planning a new Picard show coming up soon, so we shouldn't know what happened in the future. If we know that the Federation gets destroyed somehow later, then it will make the Picard show meaningless, because anything he will achieve will get undone later. So that will be a huge mistake. That's one of my problems with the Star Wars sequels, by the way, because they blew up the whole Republic and they reset things to exactly how it was in Star Wars 4, with an evil empire ruling the galaxy again, and that made the victory of Episode 6 totally meaningless. So what was the point in defeating the Empire if just a few years later everything will get reset to right back to where it started in Episode 4? So that's one of the things I hated in the sequels to Star Wars, because they basically reset everything to how it started, and they undid all the victories of the heroes. And so I really hope they won't do that in Discovery, that they won't say that the Federation collapsed and Starfleet is gone and maybe Earth is destroyed, and now Discovery has to rebuild all of that. That will be extremely annoying to me, because it will undo all the victories of all the other shows. And that's one of the things I said, that they can still mess up continuity, even though they finally left the past behind and jumped to the future, which is what they should have done in the first place. From the very beginning they should have said this show in the future, then it wouldn't have as many problems. But it doesn't mean they can now do whatever they want because they're in the future. They should still be familiar with the continuity of everything that came before. And because Star Trek was always an optimistic vision of the future, and the Federation was always part of that vision, and the optimistic future, the union of planets, all of that nice idea, I don't want them to ruin that. So that's one of the reasons I want them to keep the show like a Voyager type of show, in the distance of the Beta Quadrant, and simply not meet anyone from the Federation. That's the best way to do it. But maybe in the very end of Season 3, have them come back to Earth, and then see the bright future of humanity. And maybe it's the best idea to simply end the series there, simply have that as a nice ending of them finally returning to the Federation and seeing how great the Federation is in the future, and simply end the show right there. That would be the best way. If the show continues, it will once again pose the problem of why would they even stay on that old ship. So what would be the excuse to keep the old ship? Maybe they'll simply upgrade the ship with new technologies but keep the whole of the ship, and so it will still look the same. So I guess that's also a solution. but it should only be done in season 4 and onward if the series will be good enough to be renewed. So I think that's all I have to say for now. Let me know what you think and we can discuss it in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.